Fidu. Tomorrow morning, Nathan will enter the Wuching Celestial Palace. Inside the vast hall, a black coffin has been opened. The girl who had spent 2,000 years here left this place several years ago. Since then no one has set foot in this Fingdu Celestial Palace. Dong, dong, dong. Deep bell tolls transmitted from outside the palace, 3 consecutive resonant sounds, then disappeared without a trace. The next moment the entire palace began to shake violently. A hideous crack suddenly tore open on the smooth floor. Next to the coffin where Jelon once slept, a red coffin slowly rose from the trembling fissure in the ground. Bang! The lid of the red coffin suddenly burst open, a hand extended from within, and moments later, a figure in gray clothing slowly stood up. "Has it been 50 years?" the figure murmured. He turned to look at the coffin that once belonged to Jelon, reminiscence appearing in his eyes. He stepped toward the outside of the palace when suddenly his footsteps paused in mid-air. A brilliant golden law extended from nothingness, filling the entire palace with a familiar and sacred aura. It circled around the figure as if telling something. Michael is dead? His brows slightly furrowed, and after a moment's hesitation he raised his palm. A strand of causality thread wove across the surface of this law, braiding it into a golden cord that wrapped around his wrist. The light gradually receded, completely concealing the aura of the law. He gazed deeply at the golden cord, then stepped toward the outside of the palace. Several strands of causality thread entwined around his tattered, decayed gray robe, visibly transforming into a deep red cloak that fluttered slightly in the wind as he walked. The gods have protected us for too long. This time it's humanity's turn to act. In the boundless deep space, a dark gray light pillar erupted from a lunar crater, instantly sweeping across half the star system. As this gray light pillar dissipated, a blood-red color rapidly spread from the crater, gradually dyeing the entire moon red. A terrifying and frenzied aura descended upon the universe. This is bad. A corner of the lunar seal has been broken. The moral heavenly venerable saw that bit of writhing darkness in the center of the mountain, and his expression immediately became extremely grave. Is it possible to repair it? That's a seal left by heaven. No one can fix it except Michael. Before the words faded, a huge eye opened from within that darkness. The bizarre blood-colored pupil rapidly rotated in the void, finally locking onto the heavenly court in mid-air. Then a wolf's head occupied the gap, howling into deep space, and finally a mountain-sized worm head squeezed past the wolf's head, frantically drilling out. The moon now resembled a sealed prison with a hole. All prisoners sealed within this prison wanted to crawl out through this gap. In just a moment the gods of Great Xia saw at least 4 different Kusystem deities. In the dead silence of deep space, the first escaped Kusystem deity was exposed on the grayish-white ground. It was a massive worm large enough to coil around the crater, without a tail, with ferocious mouthed heads at both ends. Seeming to sense the heavenly court's approach, both heads began to howl silently. Next, a giant wolf transformed into a blur, leaping nimbly from the gap. Its fur resembled elongated tentacles, stirring in the void, flashing past the edge of the crater toward the other side of the moon. Meanwhile its form gradually faded, completely disappearing from view. Nodens Yidaiken musicians, Jiangxia said gravely. Having walked the mortal realm for several years specifically gathering intelligence on Kusystem deities, he could recognize these 2 monsters at a glance. That worm is manageable, but the invisible giant wolf behind it is more troublesome. It even dares to challenge the key to the gate. Legend has it, it possesses the power to break through horn-shaped spacetime and curved spacetime. Before his words ended, the 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th Kusystem deities flew out from the gap, heading straight for the heavenly court along with the initial 2-headed worm. What do we do now? Jiangxia asked solemnly. What else can we do? The primordial heavenly venerable sighed. Face them head-on. Yes. As the primordial heavenly venerable's words fell, streams of light flew out from the heavenly court. The Jade Emperor, Fengdu Emperor, Sun Wukong, Yangjian, Queen Mother of the West, and numerous golden immortals joined forces, charging toward the 5 Kusystem deities crossing the void. Brilliant divine light and violent giant shadows collided in deep space. Meanwhile, 2 more Kusystem gods escaped and rushed toward the battlefield. This won't work, the numinous treasure heavenly venerable frowned. Kusystem gods' combat power far exceeds Earth's main gods. That lunar seal still contains at least 30 more. If they all crawl out from the gap, even 5 heavenly courts combined might not be able to stop them all. We must find a way to seal that gap. Seal it? With what? As the moral heavenly venerable spoke as if realizing something, his expression changed. You mean, the heavenly court? The heavenly court is a mobile divine country, carrying the origin of great Xia mythology. If we directly press the heavenly court onto the gap, we can prevent more Kusystem gods from emerging, at least controlling the situation from worsening. Too dangerous. The heavenly court carries our origin. If it can't withstand the impact of the Kusystem gods, we'll all die. Still better than letting all the Kusystem gods escape. The numinous treasure heavenly venerable's face was extremely serious. Here's the plan. You 2 go stop us from further expanding the seal's gap. I'll take the heavenly court alone to suppress the existing gap, preventing more Kusystem gods from escaping. Can you manage alone? The primordial heavenly venerable asked gravely. I can. The numinous treasure heavenly venerable took a deep breath, terrifying divine might emanating from within. His Taoist robe moved without wind. Don't forget, I am now Earth's strongest combatant, just 1 step away from that realm. Only I can hold the gap. Very well. The primordial heavenly venerable hesitated no more. Then we leave it to you. The primordial and moral heavenly venerables transformed into 2 blurs, rapidly charging toward the crater's perimeter. All great Xia gods went to intercept the escaping Kusystem gods, leaving the entire heavenly court empty. The numinous treasure heavenly venerable opened his palm. A white chess piece lay quietly in his palm. Looking at this chess piece, his eyes revealed helplessness. He then put away the piece and controlled the entire heavenly court, flying toward the moon burning with the Saya nightfall mark. The mark of nightfall has appeared. Where are you all? Xin Qingzhu's figure shot out from within the atmosphere, the darkness of deep space coming into view. Terrifying ripples of divine power bloomed from the void. He looked up toward the sky, his brows immediately furrowing. Between Earth and the moon, several enormous and ferocious K-system gods were engaged in frenzied battle with the gods of Great Xia. Each K-system god emanated strange and fierce divine energy. It took 3 or 4 golden immortals working together to barely hold off a single K-system god. A 2-headed mountain-sized worm twisted madly in the void. Grayish flames spewed from one giant mouth, forcibly blasting apart a corner of the mountain river dominion chart that covered the sky above. The other worm head bit into True Master Yuding's shoulder, violently tearing off half his body. True Master Yuding let out a low roar, disregarding his injuries. His sword transformed into a flash of light, stabbing directly into the giant mouth and through the worm's body, shooting out from the other giant mouth on the opposite side. Pale yellow, foul-smelling pus oozed from both heads of the worm, and a miserable howl simultaneously echoed in the mental world of all great Xia gods. Xin Qingzhu was still hundreds of kilometers from the battlefield, yet his mind felt as if it were being torn apart. The golden immortals closest to the worm instantly went blank, their bodies frozen in deep space. The 2-headed worm broke free from the golden immortals' encirclement and charged straight toward Earth. At the same time, a gray domain expanded from beneath the 6-winged angel's feet. Xin Qingzhu placed his index finger to his lips, silently emerging from annihilation. In an instant, the pitch-black deep space transformed into a gray world. Endless gray energy surged wildly around the worm, locking its form in place. The divine power of the Angel of Stillness permeated through the gray, gradually seeping into the worm's body. Dense cracks began to spread across the mountain-sized body, as if it would soon crumble into dust. Just then Shin Qingzhu's brows furrowed. The churning K-system divine power surged out from within the worm again, tearing open a corner of the gray world. The worm's body, which had been locked in place, forcibly broke free from Shin Qingzhu's restraints. Its cracked skin rapidly shriveled, and a brand new worm emerged from beneath, letting out a sharp howl that pierced their minds. This worm can shed its skin? Shin Qingzhu frowned, enduring the discomfort in his mind as he clenched his hand toward the smaller worm rapidly approaching. In the vacuum of space, a ball of extremely compressed air suddenly appeared, like a marble-sized singularity. A flash of crimson ignited within this air, compressed millions of times over, and in the next moment, endless seas of fire erupted, completely engulfing the worm's form in this gray world. Yet even this couldn't kill the worm. Its enormous body continued to writhe wildly in the flames, shedding layer after layer of skin, its howls seemingly tearing everyone's consciousness to shreds. Shin Qingzhu's expression turned extremely grim. Becoming a human god with the enhancement of the six-winged angel had propelled his combat power to the peak of major gods. But even so, in a one-on-one situation he could only barely suppress a K-system deity. Without paying a certain price he had almost no way to kill it. The same scene was playing out across other battlefields. An invisible sound wave easily passed through the Qianquan ring and Huntian silk, outlining a faintly visible strange being. It had no physical form, crossing the universe like a ghost descending toward Earth. Two other golden immortals also attacked but still couldn't stop it at all. Everyone could only vaguely see its existence and sense the aura it emitted, but no matter how they attacked, their strikes simply passed through it. Damn it, what kind of monster is this? Neza shouted anxiously. Ding! A flash of sword light shot up from within the atmosphere into the void. Surging sword energy tides interwove into a wall, blocking that form outside Earth. Zhou Ping, dressed in black, emerged from the sword energy tides. He looked down at the K-system deity floating within, his expression extremely solemn. Reinforcements have arrived? Neza's eyes lit up with joy upon seeing Zhou Ping. At the same time, Qin Fuzi crossing the void in his carriage, and Lu Wuwei riding an electric scooter wearing a little yellow duck helmet also appeared on the battlefield. After them no other figures appeared. Just you few? Neza asked in astonishment. Human pinnacles are still mortal flesh. Not everyone has the ability to walk in space. And in such an urgent situation, these are the only pinnacles we could contact. Qin Fuzi replied helplessly from within his carriage's mindscape. Neza's heart sank to the bottom. Currently 9 K-system gods had broken free from the moon's seal, with more continuously emerging, but the heaven's major god-level combatants only numbered 13 or 14 in total. Even adding Shin Qingzhu, Zhou Ping and the 2 pinnacles, they simply couldn't hold back so many K-system gods. It's over, Neza murmured, gazing at the chaotic battlefield. Meanwhile, 2 Taoists passed through the gray-white terrain, leaving 2 blurry afterimages in the void, finally stopping before a deep crater. It's here. Primordial Heavenly Lord calculated the heavenly mechanisms with his fingers and spoke gravely. Moral Heavenly Lord narrowed his eyes, taking the wooden sword from his back. His black and white Taoist robe fluttered slightly in the dead silence of the void. He exchanged a glance with Primordial Heavenly Lord, and they simultaneously flashed into the deep crater. At the bottom of the pitch-black crater, mysterious seal patterns flickered. A black man was pressing both hands against the seal, and deep black energy was frantically destroying these patterns. A second gap was already faintly visible. The next moment, two supreme divine presences suddenly flooded the entire crater. Sharp sword energy and surging golden flowers tore through the moon's surface. An earth-shattering explosion penetrated the void. As the gray-white dust gradually dispersed, the black man who had been standing on the seal had vanished without a trace. Seeing this, primordial heavenly lord's brows immediately furrowed. The scene around them suddenly changed. The originally pitch-black deep crater completely disappeared, replaced by 4 bare white walls and a tightly closed door. A trap? Sensing the change in the surrounding space-time, primordial heavenly lord's expression turned grim. Before entering this deep crater, he had performed several heavenly calculations. In this world, things that could conceal themselves from his calculations and perception almost didn't exist, let alone a trap with space-time transfer capabilities. What place was this exactly? The moment this thought flashed through primordial heavenly lord's mind, the tightly closed door slowly opened. A black man wearing a white lab coat stood smiling at the doorway. He pushed up his scholarly black-framed glasses and spoke unhurriedly. "It seems we have 2 new friends. Patient number 2, Primordial Heavenly Lord, and patient number 3, Moral Heavenly Lord. I am your attending physician. You may call me Dr. Nyarla." Yes. Sensing the aura from the other party, Yuanshi Tianzuan spoke in a low voice. "What exactly do you want to do?" Chaos smiled without speaking, merely turning around leisurely to walk out. "Since my existence has already been exposed by that human ant, you would certainly come to stop me. So, I never planned to open the second gap myself. After all, if I could eliminate you 3 Tianzuan, then no one would be able to stop me. Unfortunately, only 2 of you came." Yuanshi Tianzuan walked out of the room, surveying the hospital, and noticed that the door of the 3rd ward remained tightly closed. Dao Tianzuan had not been released by chaos at the same time. It seemed that he intended to deal with the 2 Tianzuan separately. "Is this what you used to kill Michael?" Yuanshi Tianzuan asked. No, I didn't plan to kill him. He committed suicide rather than let me take his power." Chaos shrugged. "Pity, I wanted to experience what it feels like to be an angel. However, being a Tianzuan seems not bad either." Kez's lips curled slightly upward. Before Yuanshi Tianzuan could speak, he continued, "Of course you can also choose suicide like Michael did. This way, all obstacles before me except for Lingbao Tianzuan would completely disappear." Yuanshi Tianzuan's brow furrowed deeper. He didn't know what methods chaos had used here to force Michael to his death, but those methods would likely be equally effective against him and Dao Tianzuan. The 2 of them were probably in grave danger. "Put aside those useless thoughts, Yuanshi Tianzuan." Chaos put his hands in his pockets and spoke leisurely. "Michael is dead, the moon seal is open. Your Dasha gods simply cannot stop the K-system deities beneath the seal. Not to mention that you and Dao Tianzuan are now my prisoners. Your heavenly court has no chance of victory anymore." Yuanshi Tianzuan remained silent as golden flowers of the Dao essence bloomed from the void, adorning every corner of the courtyard. He stared at chaos before him with murderous intent flowing from each golden flower, overwhelming the space. This poor Taoist will not sit idly awaiting death, and neither will the heavenly court. Yuanshi Tianzuan's form swept through the void, each step creating flowers. In the next moment, countless brilliant golden petals shattered the void, engulfing chaos's figure. Bang! A palm strike emerged from the sea of flower petals, heading straight for chaos's forehead, but an identical hand rose up, colliding with Yuanshi Tianzuan's without any flourish. A dull explosion echoed above the hospital, shattering the flying flowers. Chaos, completely unharmed, clicked his tongue and spoke leisurely. "Normally, I would resist this kind of overwhelming battle. But since my power hasn't fully recovered yet, if we were outside the hospital, I could only avoid your sharp edge. So I have to rely on the rules of this place, sacrificing some of the fun." As Chaos finished speaking, he grabbed Yuanshi Tianzuan's wrist. Under the protection of the hospital's rules, no matter how Yuanshi Tianzuan attacked, he wouldn't suffer the slightest injury. With a dull knocking sound, that deep dark giant chamber rapidly spread between the two of them. Suppress. Lingbao Tianzuan's command echoed throughout the heavenly court. In the boundless deep space, the misty spiritual energy forcibly broke through the K-system divine might pouring from the gap, pressing down toward the seal. Sensing Lingbao Tianzuan's intention, the howls of the K-system gods frantically transmitted from beneath the moon seal. As a burning red glow spread around the gap's edge, a giant burning fireball immediately broke out from the seal, crashing into the descending bottom of the heavenly court. Clay. The surface of this fireball constantly flowed with petal patterns. Its terrifying destructive aura was no less than the Death Star that descended upon Earth's sky 2,000 years ago. Under this K-system god's fierce impact, the entire heavenly court violently shook. The 11th K-system god had emerged. Lingbao Tianzuan's expression changed as he frantically infused divine power into the heavenly court. The origin entangled with threads floated before him. He flicked his finger and a thread shot out, instantly slicing off half of the K-system god's fiery body. No matter how strong the K-system gods were, as long as they weren't at the level of the three-pillar gods, they couldn't match the supreme realm, let alone the current Lingbao Tianzuan whose power was at Earth's peak, just one step away from a higher realm. With this strike, the resistance blocking the heavenly court from suppressing the seal immediately decreased. But at that moment the 12th K-system gods squeezed out. Following closely, the 13th and 14th also forced their way out. By now, the number of K-system gods on the battlefield even exceeded Dasha's main gods. These three K-system gods didn't foolishly attack Lingbao Tianzuan but used all their might to frantically hammer at the heavenly court. Boom, boom, boom. Palaces collapsed throughout the heavenly court, and hideous cracks instantly covered the entire ground. With these K-system gods' siege, fissures broke open all over, and the misty spiritual energy continuously leaked in all directions. This is bad, the heavenly court is in danger too. On the other battlefield where they were fighting the K-system gods, the Dasha gods who were constantly monitoring the heavenly court felt their hearts sink to the bottom. Looking at the extremely unstable origin of the heavenly court before him, Lingbao Tianzuan's face was extremely grim. No matter how strong he was, two fists couldn't fight four hands, especially since these K-system gods' goal from the beginning was to completely destroy the heavenly court. At this rate, in at most a few dozen seconds, the heavenly court would disintegrate, and the origin would be damaged beyond repair. Once the origin was lost, the heavenly court god's battle power would sharply decrease. Facing so many K-system gods, the situation would become a one-sided slaughter. Ding! A sword light flashed through the void, instantly piercing through one of the K-system god's bodies. It was a K-system god that looked like a squid or a toad. Its skull was pierced by the sword light, and green blood instantly poured into deep space. The sword light was too fast, even they couldn't react in time. The sword broke out from the flesh and stabbed straight into the grayish-white ground. Only then did Lingbao Tianzuan clearly see the sword's appearance. It was a broken sword. The sword's hilt was wrapped with a ribbon, its surface damaged and yellowed, an ancient artifact from who knows how many years ago. That is, Lingbao Tianzuan was slightly stunned, then seemed to realize something as joy appeared in his eyes. It's him. Is it him from that time? This sword strike, although it pierced the K-system god's head, didn't kill it. It furiously descended before the sword, its mouth like a black hole emitting a roaring howl that shattered the grayish-white ground inch by inch. At the same time, a slender causality thread extended from the void, wrapping around the hilt of the Ain no Murakumo sword. A figure crossed the void along the thread, appearing behind the sword hilt. It was a man wearing a deep red cloak. He gripped the sword hilt with one hand, pulling it from the broken ground, calmly gazing at the huge, terrifying K-system deity before him, his eyes calm and unwavering. In the presence of this king Black Toad, why Do you not kneel? Dense causality threads floated out from under the cloak, entering the wound he had personally cut. A past that never existed flooded into the K-system deity's memory, and its gaze gradually became clouded. The green blood drifted in the air. Under the boundless deep space, the enormous toad shadow slowly bowed down before the ant-like figure in deep red. Seeing this scene, the spiritual treasure Celestial Lord and the other two Q-system gods who were besieging the Celestial Court all froze in place. At the same time, on the other battlefield, the gods of Great Xia who were closely watching the Celestial Court also opened their mouths in shock. What's going on? Who is that deep red figure? How could they make a Q-system god kneel? The three-pillar gods? But, chaos isn't here either. Could it be key to the door? That cloak? Nessa squinted at the figure standing in the center of the moon pattern as if remembering something and suddenly widened his eyes. Nightfall? He is Lin Chia. The roaring blue flames burned silently on the moon. At the intersection of the two slash marks that penetrated the circular ring, in the center of the mark belonging to Nightfall, a deep red cloak fluttered slightly. Left Commander. Lin Chia didn't even look at the kneeling black toad, his gaze fixed on the straight knife inserted into the ground in the distance. Blue flames danced on the blade and the Nightfall mark illuminating the deep space under his feet existed because of that knife. This was Left Qing's final call leading them here. Under the deep red cloak, Lin Chia slowly clenched his fists. His gaze swept over the celestial court that was about to shatter in the distance and the battlefield where gods were surrounded by Q-system gods, finally stopping somewhere in the void in the distance. God's mental hospital? A cold gleam flashed in Lin Chia's eyes. So it was him. Chia. Above the celestial court, the spiritual treasure Celestial Lord spoke solemnly, "Lend me your strength." With one black toad no longer attacking, the pressure on the celestial court suddenly decreased. The spiritual treasure Celestial Lord immediately drew another thread from his origin and struck down another Q-system god. Powerful spiritual energy surged out from the celestial court, and this massive divine country was pressing toward the breach while withstanding the divine might of many Q-system gods in the seal. Lin Chia narrowed his eyes and immediately said, "Black toad." Boom. Entangled by countless causal threads, the toad-like Q-system god suddenly sprang up from the lunar surface. Its form was like a fired cannonball, violently crashing into the last Q-system god attacking the celestial court. The two Q-system gods fell onto the cratered lunar surface, fighting and grappling with each other. Two strange and violent divine auras instantly leveled several mountain peaks. Free from all external interference, a gleam flashed in the spiritual treasure Celestial Lord's eyes. He made several hand seals in succession, and a primordial black hole bloomed from the bottom of the celestial court, directly tearing apart several hideous tentacles extending from the breach in the seal. Boom! The celestial court firmly pressed down on the breach, and misty spiritual energy poured into the seal, forcibly closing the gap through which the Q-system gods were escaping. After doing all this, the spiritual treasure Celestial Lord finally let out a long breath. A deep red figure landed lightly in the celestial court. "You are Lin Chia from back then, aren't you?" The spiritual treasure Celestial Lord smiled. Lin Chia smiled slightly. His gaze fixed on the spiritual treasure Celestial Lord for a moment, a trace of complexity flashing in his eyes. "I didn't notice before, but after seeing you from 2,000 years ago, I realized there are some differences." Differences? Compared to the spiritual treasure Celestial Lord of the past, you have some of Bai Li Pongpong's shadow in you. The spiritual treasure Celestial Lord was stunned. The corners of Lin Chia's mouth turned up slightly, his expression looking somewhat stiff. He couldn't remember how many years it had been since he last smiled. This long-absent smile made his cheeks feel unnaturally rigid. "How did you make that Q-system god obey you? Have you become a god?" "Half of one, I suppose." Lin Chia looked at his palm. In these 2000 years I've only mastered the law of cause in cause and effect, not the complete version. I'm considered half a god of causality. As for that Q-system god, I merely wounded him and used his flesh and blood as a medium to create a non-existent causality. In about half an hour he will regain consciousness. The spiritual treasure celestial lord looked at the distant battlefield and asked, "You've been planning for so many years, you must have a way to stop all this, right? Stopping is not enough." The smile gradually faded from Lin Chia's face, his expression growing somber again. He looked at Left Qing's knife in his arms and slowly said, "I also want to make them pay for all this." The spiritual treasure celestial lord nodded slightly. "I need to guard the breach here. The future of the celestial court and humanity is in your hands now, Captain." Lin Chia's gaze intensified slightly. He exchanged a glance with the spiritual treasure celestial lord and they both smiled. He gripped the Aim no Murakumo sword in his hand and his form disappeared into the distance like a streak of light. After flying hundreds of kilometers, Lin Chia slowly stopped in the air above a deep crater. He looked down and narrowed his eyes. "It's time to return what you stole from me. Chaos." A thread of causality extended from his palm and disappeared into the void of the deep crater. A moment later Lin Chia's form vanished into thin air. God's mental hospital. Boom. A figure was sent flying from a dark giant room, crashing into and shattering a building. Cough, cough, cough. Amidst the billowing dust, the figure of the primordial celestial lord slowly stood up, his robe already covered in blood. He stared fixedly at the figure walking out from the darkness, his eyes full of shock and gravity. To be able to forcibly break out of my dark giant room, as expected of the primordial celestial lord. Chaos wore a white coat walking calmly on the courtyard lawn. But what's the point of struggling to survive? You've already destroyed 4 universes? The primordial celestial lord recovered from the shock of seeing the 4 black coffins. Why are you doing this? Does destruction need a reason? Plus, said indifferently. In the past 4 universes, all beings who resisted us have fallen into eternal madness. You will be next. The primordial celestial lord's blood-colored hand slowly clenched. He now understood how Michael had died. In front of those 4 black coffins burying mad universes, no being could maintain conscious clarity, not even the supreme gods. They couldn't escape this hospital. This was invincible here, and with those 4 coffins capable of subverting everything, all possibilities were sealed off. They only had 2 choices: become madmen controlled by chaos, or commit suicide. The primordial celestial lord took a deep breath, determination appearing in his eyes. Just as he was about to end his own life, a crisp knocking sound came from the distance. Tap tap. This sound wasn't coming from the black coffins, but was a real knocking on a door. Upon hearing this sound, Chaos suddenly froze. He turned his head in confusion and found that the sound was coming from the row of patient rooms on the 2nd floor of the ward. It seems our patient number 3 is still not giving up. Chaos's gaze naturally fell on room number 3 where the moral celestial lord was located. He sneered dismissively, not taking it seriously. Tap tap tap. The knocking sound rang out again. Chaos's smile suddenly froze on his face. This time he heard clearly. The knocking wasn't coming from room number 3, but from the last room at the end of the 2nd floor. The 6th patient room. Tap 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 tap. As the knocking continued, the door plate that originally had a suddenly changed to another pattern, a and X, overlapping like 2 slash marks cutting through the night, sharp and mysterious. Creak. Under Kez's astonished gaze, the door of this 6th patient room opened from the inside. A deep red figure slowly walked out. We meet again. Chaos. The moment he saw that face clearly, his pupils suddenly contracted. It's you. Kez spoke in confusion. This is impossible. How can you be here? Lin Chia stood in the corridor in front of the second-floor ward, calmly looking down at below and slowly said, "You seem to have forgotten that originally I was its master. There exists a causal connection between it and me, and as long as there is a causal link I can enter." Caius stared intently at Lin Chia. Above him a progress bar appeared. Lin Chia treatment progress, 83%. Was stunned for a moment, then burst into laughter. "So what if you came in? You came from the ward, which means you're a patient here. As a patient you can't harm me. Your return only means you'll die along with the others." As the words fell, Caius raised his palm and the light and shadows around him rapidly collapsed, transforming into a beam of light filled with destructive energy, thunderously shooting toward the second-floor corridor. The primordial heavenly lord frowned, his figure darting forward. Boom! A golden flower bloomed in the void, tearing that light beam apart in nothingness. The primordial heavenly lord, wearing a blood-stained Taoist robe, stood weakly in front of Lin Chia and spoke hoarsely. "Lin Chia, this is not a place you should come to, leave quickly." Lin Chia shook his head. He stepped past the primordial heavenly lord and instead stood in front of him. Looking at the straight, deep red figure before him, the primordial heavenly lord was slightly stunned. "Heavenly Lord, for the past 1,000 years humanity has been under the care of the heavenly court. This time let us handle it." Lin Chia's voice slowly came from in front. The primordial heavenly lord frowned, about to say something more, but realized that the Lin Chia before him seemed somewhat different from the one he had met before. Though his aura and body were that of Lin Chia, he seemed like a different person, mysterious and unfamiliar. "You?" Confusion appeared on the primordial heavenly lord's face. "Lin Chia, you're being too confident." Caius raised his eyebrows slightly. "Last time right here I took your hospital from you, stole your physical body. Why are you still so slow to learn? How much courage has a Hongmeng spirit embryo given you? Don't forget I am now the master of this hospital. What can you use to fight me? This hospital has never had a master. That's what you told me when you took it." Lin Chia calmly replied. "I wasn't before and you are even less so now. You've merely put on this garment, crowned yourself with the title of director, and plundered some of its abilities. This hospital, like you, comes from beyond this world and it has its own consciousness. Do you think it would willingly allow itself to be continuously plundered by you, reduced to a tool of slaughter? What if it's unwilling? What can it do?" Caius snorted coldly. "The consciousness of this hospital has been completely worn away by me. Now my will is the will of this hospital. I am its only master. Is it worn away completely, or did it actively hide itself away?" Hearing these words, his brows slightly furrowed. "Hide? Where could it hide? On you. When you took this hospital you expelled me out. It certainly couldn't hide on me. But don't forget, besides me, there are other beings existing in this hospital." Lin Chia extended his hand, pointing at the ground beneath his feet. "For example, the orderlies?" Caius, as if remembering something, looked somewhat gloomy. "Those low-level mysteries that don't even qualify as myths? Do you think the consciousness of this hospital from beyond the domain would choose them?" Lin Chia stared at us for a long time, not answering his question, but instead asked, "Do you know what your greatest weakness is?" Caius frowned silently. "You're too arrogant," Lin Chia slowly said. "You are one of the 3 pillar gods of the Gram system and the strongest one. To you humans are merely a low-level species. You enjoy observing them, imitating them, toying with them, just as humans enjoy watching ants move house. You relish the pleasure and satisfaction that comes from understanding the thoughts and actions of lower beings. And in your eyes, mysteries and humans alike are insignificant races, as trivial as ants. But you've overlooked one thing. In every race there are some special existences." Plus, looked at Lin Chia, seemingly not understanding why he would say these things at this moment. Just as he was about to take action to resolve this trouble, The sound of a door opening came from behind. Creak. Another one. Hearing the door open, cuss, his heart skipped a beat. He turned to look but found that this time it wasn't any ward door that had opened, but the door to the director's office. A figure wearing a deep green orderly uniform slowly walked out. In his palm, a white chess piece was emitting a faint light. Seeing that long-absent face, Lin Chia's lips curved slightly upward. Long time no see. Li Yifei. Hee hee. Li Yifei looked at the chess piece in his hand and laughed. Uncle Merlin was right. Even I have an irreplaceable role. I've waited for so many years, and this day has finally fucking arrived. He gripped the chess piece in his hand and threw it forcefully toward Lin Chia. A beam of light crossed the void, landing precisely in Lin Chia's palm. Locking us in the dungeon, huh? Not seeing us as human, huh? Old kiss. Your masterly has been tolerating you for a long time. Li Yifei waved his hand grandly and shouted with great vigor. Chia. Take him down. A brilliant light burst forth from the chess piece in Lin Chia's palm. The hospital consciousness that had been dormant in Li Yifei's body for so long finally reappeared in this moment. The shattered ground began to rapidly repair itself. The desolate grassland burned out and regenerated. A mysterious gaze converged on Lin Chia, and all the rules of this hospital were frantically gathering toward him. That was the anger of all the orderlies trapped in the dungeon, suffering endless torment. That was the hostility and unwillingness born from the hospital's consciousness under S corruption. That was the first move in a chess game spanning 2,000 years, and the winning move that would overturn the world situation. His name was Li Yifei. At this moment the white coat draped over us suddenly self-ignited, instantly turning to ash and disappearing without a trace. He looked at his own hands in astonishment as a virtual panel lit up above his head. Nyarlathotep treatment progress. 95%. At the same time, on the door plate of the 6th ward in the hospital, the original mark gradually faded away, transforming back into a surging darkness. Patient and doctor, their identities instantly switched. Lin Chia's hand grasped in the void, and a brand new white coat appeared draped over his shoulders. He took out a pair of black-framed glasses from the coat pocket and gently placed them on the bridge of his nose. With a warm smile, he walked toward the astonished, yes. Hello, my patient number 6, Nyarlathotep. My name is Lin Chia. I am your attending physician and also the director here. You can call me Dr. Lin. Hearing those familiar yet piercing words, his expression turned extremely ugly. He turned to look at the center of the courtyard, where the chessboard that was originally covered with black pieces now had more than half of them stained white. This meant that part of the asylum's authority that originally belonged to him had completely fallen into Lin Chia's hands. Ever since he seized the mental asylum, he had been trying to usurp the asylum's authority. Although there was some resistance at first, it became increasingly easier later on. He had thought that the asylum's consciousness was too weak and had completely lost its ability to resist, but unexpectedly, it had secretly transferred all authority to a snake person who was like an ant. Case had gone to great lengths to snatch the asylum from Lin Chia's hands, only to have it forcibly taken back by the caretaker he left behind. His chest heaved violently. You all are toying with me? You've plotted against me twice, nearly costing me my life. This time's my turn. Lin Chia gently pushed up the black-framed glasses on his nose. The locked third room on the 2nd floor of the asylum automatically opened, and a figure wearing a black and white Taoist robe walked out. It was the moral Heavenly Venerable who had been imprisoned by S. The original Heavenly Venerable's lips curled into a smile. He and the moral Heavenly Venerable stood on either side of Lin Chia, and 2 supreme divine presences descended with a thunderous impact. 2 Heavenly Venerables and Lin Chia, who was invincible within the asylum. With the shift in authority and identity exchange, Chaos's originally certain victory took a sharp downturn. Sword rise. The moral heavenly venerable pointed with his fingertip, and the wooden sword behind him flew out with a howl. In an instant the entire asylum was reduced to just black and white colors. A wooden sword pierced through the void, pointing directly at Kiss' chest. Kiss's expression changed. A pair of dark giant hands suddenly reached out from the void, gripping the wooden sword. The terrifying counter-divine presence frantically rubbed against the wooden sword, the resulting turbulence directly shredding that mysterious black robe into pieces, along with leaving his chest covered in blood. When Kiss left the asylum, he had no physical body. This current body was directly stolen from Lin Chia. Without the invincible protection of the asylum, this mortal vessel could hardly withstand the attack of a supreme deity. At the same time, a figure flashed behind him. Golden flowers flew everywhere as the original heavenly venerable formed hand seals, and a terrifying golden ripple spread from beneath his feet. Chaos. His pupils contracted slightly. His form instantly disappeared from the spot, and the next moment, a spell mark exploded in the void, like a brilliant sun blooming in the sky above the courtyard. Charred burns appeared on Kiss' body surface, then rapidly healed completely. He frowned as he looked at the two heavenly venerables before him, his expression extremely unpleasant. "You forced me to do this." A hint of hatred appeared in his eyes, and a muffled knocking sound suddenly came from behind. A strange shadow opened up beneath his feet, outlining a dark giant chamber. 4 black coffins hung behind us, with chilling and manic energy surging out frantically. Seeing these 4 black coffins, the original heavenly venerable's expression changed. "Be careful, those coffins contain contaminated universes with extremely strong polluting power." The moral heavenly venerable retrieved the wooden sword from midair, seemingly also sensing the strange energy emanating from the black coffins, his form instantly tensing. "Leave it to me." Lin Chia spoke calmly as he stepped directly toward the dark giant chamber. Seeing Lin Chia walking forward so fearlessly, his eyes flashed with cold light. He spoke coldly. "You don't know when to die." Kiss had once possessed the asylum's authority and knew clearly that even with Lin Chia holding authority, he couldn't block the mental contamination of 4 universes. As long as he drove him to madness, he could naturally reclaim the authority. Thud, thud, thud. Muffled knocking sounds came from inside the 4 black coffins, but Lin Chia walked toward the 4 black coffins with steady steps as if he hadn't heard anything. The knocking sounds became increasingly urgent. The aura that could make even supreme beings lose their sanity surged frantically, but the treatment progress bar above Lin Chia's head didn't fluctuate at all. He looked at us, in the distance, his expression completely calm. Whoosh. The figure in the white coat instantly disappeared, and when it reappeared, it was already in front of one of the black coffins. His palms slammed heavily onto the surface of the black coffin, making a muffled sound. Primordial spiritual energy overflowed from his palm, and the terrifying power directly knocked that black coffin down from the sky, precisely toward the first room on the 2nd floor of the ward. At the same time, the door of the ward automatically opened. The deep, dark room swallowed this first black coffin, and as soon as the door locked, the muffled knocking sound disappeared with it. The door plate of room number 1 gradually changed, finally settling on a deep space pattern with twinkling stars. The universe in the black coffin was also a patient who had fallen into madness. Seeing Lin Chia seal 1 black coffin in a ward, his pupils trembled violently and he spoke in disbelief. "How is this possible? Why weren't you contaminated by it?" It should be known that these 4 black coffins contained contaminating power capable of subverting the universe, and were one of Chaos's most powerful trump cards. Even the Archangel Michael and the 2 heavenly venerables couldn't resist it. How could Lin Chia, a human, possibly ignore this contamination? Just then, Chaos seemed to think of something. "Is it the anchor?" The anchor deep in your soul can actually resist their contamination. When expelling Lin Chia's soul from his body, Kiss had already seen the existence of the anchor, but he hadn't expected Lin Chia to survive afterward, let alone return in this form one day, to the point that he had almost forgotten about this. Lin Chia spoke calmly. In this world there is no such thing as destiny. Behind everything that seems predetermined are merely the pawns of cause and effect. The vastness of space-time is endless. If there were no cause and effect pushing behind the scenes, how could we have so coincidentally encountered the location of the ancestral god temple back then? Thud thud thud. Lin Chia's form flashed continuously, sealing the remaining black coffins into the remaining wards. The urgent knocking sound abruptly stopped, and the surrounding dark giant chamber rapidly receded. As the dark giant chamber disappeared, the two Taoist figures appeared on either side of us. Supreme-level Taoist energy erupted, and the two heavenly venerables jointly fixed Hus's body in place. In the misty dust, an arm wearing a white coat suddenly grabbed his collar. Under Lin Chia's ice-cold gaze, strands of cause and effect threads entwined around his palm. "Give me back my body." Bang! That hand wrapped in cause and effect slammed heavily onto his forehead. 2,000 years ago, this was here expelling his soul with a single strike, occupying this unique and extraordinary body that was unmatched in the world. And now Lin Chia is going to take it back with his own hands. Countless threads of cause and effect entangled this physical body. Chaos. His body seemed to receive some kind of summoning and began to violently tremble. A mysterious force was frantically squeezing his soul, trying to expel it from the body. It's worth noting that this body originally belonged to Lin Chia, and they share the closest causal connection in the world. This is the key to his return home. Although at his current level he couldn't directly confront chaos, the soul, with the assistance of two heavenly venerable, things became completely different. A blurry figure was gradually squeezed out of the body. As countless causal threads fell to the ground, the black man who had been fixed in place by the two heavenly venerable quickly twisted and transformed back into the original appearance of Lin Chia. The soul form of Hus fell into the hospital courtyard, raising dust everywhere. After losing its soul, Lin Chia's original body immediately fell to the ground like mud. Now it was just a human shell with several divine ruins and origins, while Lin Chia's soul still existed within the primordial spirit embryo. The spirit embryo Lin Chia quickly grabbed this physical body. Threads of cause and effect traveled along his wrist and entered the empty body. Then the body gradually stood up, standing in the air like a marionette. Two Lin Kais stood side by side looking at each other. Looking at this stiff version of himself, Lin Chia felt strange, but he had no intention of returning his soul to his original body. After all, even the best body couldn't compare to the primordial spirit embryo that could match gods and possessed endless lifespan. As for his original body, Lin Chia naturally didn't want to waste it. Through the control of causal threads he could turn it into something like a clone, just without its own consciousness. In the shattered courtyard, Chaos, who had returned to soul form, struggled to stand up. He looked at the two Lin Kais in the sky, his face extremely ugly. Damn it! He had spent so much time and effort to seize the hospital and that body, but how long had it been before Lin Chia took everything back? Not only was it all for nothing, but now even preserving his soul form was a question. Boom! A figure fell from the sky onto the shattered ground. Lin Chia, wearing a deep red cloak, slowly walked toward Chaos. As his eyes narrowed, a broken sword appeared in his palm. Originally, when Chaos occupied his body, Lin Chia had been afraid to fight with the Amano Murakumo sword to avoid hurting himself. But now things were different. Reclaiming control of the hospital, resisting contamination with a prepared anchor, sealing Kus trump cards with 4 black coffins, separating his soul from Lin Chia's body. Most of these moves were within the calculations of the Destiny Monk. And after these steps were completed, the situation developed to a delicate point. Here as a patient, couldn't harm Director Lin. While Director Lin held the Almanomurakumo sword that could cut anything, not only could it harm us, a soul form, but it could also prevent it from healing forever. This was an absolute advantage brought by the rules, a crushing superiority that defied reason. From this moment the revenge was just beginning. Lin Chia gripped the Almanomurakumo sword, and beneath his bone-chilling gaze emerged unprecedented anger and killing intent. His figure rapidly crossed the shattered ground. Chaos's expression changed as he instantly transformed into the pharaoh form symbolizing destruction. Turbid spheres condensed in space, and rampant destructive energy filled the entire hospital. Boom, boom, boom. Thick beams of light penetrated the void, making even space-time curl from the heat. Although his had lost the hospital and physical body, his soul form still possessed supreme combat power. Any single beam here could destroy half a continent's life in half a second. Everything in the divine mental hospital was annihilated in the light beams except for the ward. Even the signboard outside the walls and iron gates turned to dust. In a gray world, only a lonely ward remained floating. But even so, a white figure still broke through the light beams unharmed and flashed before us. The broken blade pierced through chaos, surface and deeply entered his soul form. Lin Chia's hand tightly gripped the sword hilt, bringing his face closer to us than ever before. In a trance, he saw that ferocious face again with its leisurely smirking expression. After lurking in the shadows for so many years, what I've been plotting, you should be able to guess, right? Director Lin. You've occupied it for too long, Director Lin. This thing never should have belonged to you. From today on I, Nyarlathotep, am its new master. I've been lurking in this hospital for so long and I've set my eyes on two things. One is this hospital and the other, can you guess what it is? And the other thing is you. Lin Chia's hand applied more force. The intense pain made Chaos's mouth twitch frantically. He murmured, "You like taking things, huh?" Whoosh. The blade was pulled out of Chaos's soul form, then violently stabbed into another spot. Strange blood seeped from the soul form, gradually staining the sword. Guess. Me? Of course I'm the most benevolent, selfless and strongest leader of the Western holy religion, Yelland. Ha. Yes. That's the expression. Confusion, shock, bewilderment, terror. It's wonderful. It's truly wonderful. I laid out my progress in controlling this hospital right in front of all of you, but you couldn't guess its meaning. Every time I saw your confused expressions, it was so interesting. Brilliant, truly brilliant. No matter which era, you always give me the best experience. Ha. You like toying with people's hearts, huh? Lin Chia forcefully twisted the sword hilt, frantically tearing apart Chaos's body. Excruciating pain filled Chaos's mind as he stared at the face before him with endless rage surging in his heart. When had he, one of the three elder gods of the Cthulhu mythos, ever been humiliated to this extent by a human insect? The Black Pharaoh's chest suddenly burst open, and a pair of pale arms strangely extended out, grabbing Lin Chia's sword-wielding hands and firmly locking his form. Chaos's mouth opened and dense tentacles poured out, directly engulfing Lin Chia's form. He couldn't hurt Lin Chia, but trapping him this way wasn't difficult. Chaos, who had just been stabbed multiple times by the Almanomurakumo sword, had barely caught his breath when suddenly a figure emerged from the night. A brilliant summoning array flashed, followed by a sword light that pierced through Chaos's back. His pupils contracted violently. The second Lin Chia, holding the Almanomurakumo sword controlled by causal threads, slowly approached us from behind and whispered in his ear. His lips parted slightly as he said mockingly, "You did well, child." This simple sentence directly ignited Chaos's brutality and madness. He originally resided above all living beings, playfully treating humans as ant-like playthings, but now, everything he had done was forcibly turned back upon himself. This sense of disparity and unreality simply crushed the originally extremely arrogant him, trampling him into the filthiest and most sordid excrement. The Kusanagi sword that he had personally snapped, even if it slashed him 100 times, might not be able to kill him. But a single sentence from Lin Chia made him feel as if he was being sliced by thousands of knives. At this moment, even he himself didn't realize that he who was most skilled at manipulating people's hearts had already had his emotions manipulated in Lin Chia's hands. Just as Lin Chia had said, whatever had once brought upon him, he would return it all. Lin Chia, you think that by controlling this hospital, you can keep me under your foot forever? The severely wounded Gus roared in fury, I am the crawling Gus. For a mere human to defeat me, you're still tens of millions of years too early. Gus' form collapsed on the spot, instantly escaping the sharpness of the Kusanagi sword. Streams of blurry light points spread in the air, covering the entire hospital like a mist. In an instant, both versions of Lin Chia and the two heavenly venerable were enveloped within. An eerie and strange aura spread through the air. Lin Chia's heart skipped a beat, suddenly having an extremely ominous premonition. Before he could take any action, the surrounding chaotic light points, along with space-time, rapidly collapsed toward the center. This collapse happened too quickly. If viewed from high above, it would look like a black hole suddenly born in the vast universe. The difference was that this black hole wasn't purely black, but faintly tinged with a hint of red. And at the center of this black hole, visible Q-system pollution was spreading frantically, like countless invisible tentacles extending from the hole, writhing in disorder, devouring everything around. Even the Divine Mental Hospital, which had been reduced to just one ward building, was uncontrollably flying toward the center of that hole. That was Chaos' most ancient form, and also his most indescribably terrifying state. A chaotic black hole filled with evil and rage. The moment Chaos transformed into a black hole, 3 clusters of blood mist erupted in the void. Lin Chia's original physical body was instantly shattered into blood mist, like a mosquito casually slapped to death. Even the 2 heavenly venerable Yuanshi and Dowd were forcibly dismantled, falling into serious injury in the blink of an eye. Only Lin Chia, protected by the hospital, remained unharmed in the face of this absolute destruction. He looked down at that collapsing black hole of evil, his expression extremely grave. He hadn't expected that Chaos, with only a soul body remaining, would still possess such terrifying power, even able to seriously injure the 2 heavenly venerable in an instant. If he hadn't been protected by the hospital, he would have likely died instantly. No wonder he always claimed to be the strongest among the 3 pillar gods. In this form, Lin Chia knew of no existence that could contend with him. He had to deal with this evil black hole immediately, otherwise even the 2 heavenly venerable wouldn't be able to hold out for long. In the void, Lin Chia's white coat moved without wind. He raised his palm and pressed down toward the continuously collapsing black hole. Above the rotating black hole, a door large enough to block out the sky took shape, slowly pressing down toward the black hole. At the same time, 5 infinitely large white walls appeared from above, below, left, right, and behind like a gradually converging cube, attempting to seal the black hole within. A blurry roar transmitted from the center of the black hole, like Chaos' unwilling howl. Those invisible tentacles frantically extended, trying to resist these approaching walls and door, but even so they only slightly slowed their speed. Lin Chia looked down at this scene, his suspended hand gradually clenching into a fist, while the 6 planes around the black hole drew increasingly closer. Amid his unwilling roars of rage, they finally closed together tightly, just like a locked hospital room. The moment the hospital room took shape, the world-destroying aura suddenly disappeared. The outline of the ward building rapidly took shape outside this room. The surrounding space-time distorted, and the void where Lin Chia stood transformed into the second-floor corridor of the ward building, while he once again stood in front of the hospital room that sealed chaos. The sixth hospital room. Lin Chia, wearing the white coat, looked up at the GUS nameplate on the sixth hospital room, his back already soaked with cold sweat. Kiss, in that state, was too terrifying, actually able to interfere with the hospital's rules. If he hadn't forcibly used the ward's power to imprison him back in the hospital room, he might have truly broken through the hospital's barriers and escaped to the outside world. If he had escaped to the outside world, the hospital's protection would have become ineffective, and things would have become truly troublesome. As chaos was sealed in the hospital room, the previously annihilated ground and other hospital facilities gradually repaired and took shape. The outline of the Divine Mental Hospital was once again delineated, and two bloodied figures weakly fell onto the cracked grass. "Are you two all right, Heavenly Venerables?" Lin Chia walked to them and asked with concern. "No life-threatening danger." Yuanshur Heavenly Venerable coughed a few times and said bitterly, "Thanks to you this time, otherwise we too would have certainly died. Without hundreds of years of bitter cultivation, I'm afraid it will be difficult to fully recover." Dowd Heavenly Venerable looked at the wooden sword full of cracks in his hand, his expression also full of helplessness. He seemed to remember something. "Our injuries can recover, but it's a pity about your physical body." The two supreme gods could barely resist the power of that black hole, but Lin Chia's original body wasn't so robust. It was instantly crushed into pieces by chaos. It should be noted that it still had more than 10 divine ruins and dark origins, as well as the world's last, mortal divine domain. "It's not a pity," Lin Chia smiled. "That body actually had one more trump card." Lin Chia turned to look into the distance. In the drifting blood mist, a strand of monkey hair gradually dissipated, and the next moment his physical body, which had already shattered into blood mist, was reconstituted. The third, life-saving hair. The last time Lin Chia extracted Sun Wukong's abilities, he got 3 chances to use life-saving hair. He lost 2 chances in Asgard, and the last hair had always remained on that physical body. Now it was this third life-saving hair that saved this physical body. Seeing this, the two Heavenly Venerable relaxed their expressions. After dealing with Fuss, the most troublesome character, they were both physically and mentally exhausted. "Heavenly Venerables, I'll take you out." Lin Chia waved his hand, and the 3 disappeared from the Divine Mental Hospital. When they reappeared, they had returned to the original lunar surface. Dazzling explosion light penetrated the deep universe, illuminating this gray-white land with continuous flashes. Lin Chia raised his head to look at the great Xia gods who were at a disadvantage in space, his eyes slightly narrowed. Now comes the main event. The chaos, although suppressed in the hospital, is far from the only crisis now. More than 10 ecosystem gods who escaped from the moon are battling with the great Xia gods in deep space. In battles of this level, lesser gods have almost no role to play, and even with the great Xia's main gods combined with the 3 human reinforcements, they can at most simultaneously resist the attacks of 8 ecosystem gods. As the heavenly court sealed the breach on the moon, the last few escaping ecosystem gods abandoned their attack on the heavenly court and directly changed direction, bypassing the divine battlefield and rushing toward Earth. On the other side of the moon, 2 Heavenly Venerables saw this and their brows furrowed with gravity. "This is bad. Too many ecosystem gods have escaped, and the heavenly court cannot withstand them." The 2 Heavenly Venerables certainly wanted to help the great Xia gods, but they were too severely injured from the chaos's desperate attack. Forget fighting the ecosystem gods, they could barely maintain their crushed physical forms. "Venerable ones," Lin Chia said solemnly, "your injuries are too severe. It's better to stabilize your physical forms first. As for the battlefield, leave it to me." Hearing this, the moral heavenly venerable's expression immediately became hesitant. Lin Chia, we know your strength has soared, but with just your power alone, how can you stop those 5 ecosystem gods? 5 ecosystem gods converted to earth battle power equivalents would require at least a dozen main gods to barely resist, or 7 or 8 human-turned gods like Xin Qingzhu or Zhou Ping. No matter how strong Lin Chia was, he hadn't reached the supreme realm and wasn't even a god yet. One person blocking 5 ecosystem gods was nothing but a fool's dream. Lin Chia shook his head. He took out a white chess piece from his pocket and calmly looked up toward Earth. I am not alone. Great Xia. National Fate Island. In the ceaselessly surging national fate of Great Xia, a young figure wearing armor, as if sensing something, slowly opened his eyes. He looked down at his palm, where a white chess piece was emitting a faint light as if telling him something. Marquis. A beautiful woman in court ceremonial dress approached from the other end of the national fate current. She gently removed her hairpin, and her black hair naturally cascaded over her shoulders. At the end of that hairpin, a chess piece like white jade was also emitting a faint light. Huitsubing nodded slightly. He stood up and looked at the void above. This day has finally come. His hand gripping the spear suddenly exerted force. A brilliant beam of light instantly penetrated the sky and earth, and terrifying aftershocks continuously spread from the beam, illuminating the dark night sky as bright as day. Boom! Thick lightning streaked across the sky. Tsunamis formed into rings, frantically being pulled away from the island's direction. Strong winds swept through every corner of the island. The forests covering the mountains shook violently, as if they would be uprooted at any moment. What's happening? The second-generation Night Watchman Commander-in-Chief Li Qiangqiang stood on a cliff, looking at the terrifying beam of light penetrating from the ground to the sky. What's wrong with the Marquis? Why is he so angry today? Haven't you noticed? In space, there seems to be large-scale divine power fluctuations. The fourth-generation Commander-in-Chief Wang Qing looked up at the sky. In places we cannot see, the divine war has already begun. From the roaring waves, a young man holding a halberd and wearing a white shirt floated out, landing steadily beside the two. He was the third-generation Night Watchman Commander-in-Chief, Tang Yuxing. The entire sea area has been stirred into chaos. With such terrifying aura, could the Marquis already? Are you saying the Marquis is about to take that step? Li Qiangqiang seemed to realize something, his voice rising several degrees. Sword Saint Zhou Ping could create his own laws and become a sword immortal. Do you think the Marquis's talent would be much worse than his? More than 2,000 years ago, the Marquis couldn't take that step because of his naturally short lifespan, but now that he has been immersed in the national fate for such a long time, he probably should have taken that step long ago. Can a heroic spirit form also become a god? A heroic spirit form cannot become a god. From the other side of the mountain path, Nya Jinshan in a Zhongshan suit walked over slowly, his expression somewhat complex. But what if the Marquis abandons this heroic spirit form? Hearing these words, the other three commanders were stunned, quickly realizing what he meant, and suddenly looked toward the direction of the light beam. You mean the Marquis? The soaring light beam gradually dissipated, and two figures penetrated the void, instantly appearing before the four. The moment these two figures appeared, overwhelming pressure swept across heaven and earth. One wore armor and held a spear, exuding a stern, sharp intent mixed with piercing spear sounds, as if to pierce the entire sky. The other wore court ceremonial dress, elegant and serene, with countless faces frantically flashing beneath her robe, her eyes as deep as the bottom of a winter lake. Greetings, Marquis. Greetings, Elder Gongyang. The four commanders bowed respectfully. Since they had transformed into heroic spirits and arrived on this island, these two had already existed. But until now they had never sensed such terrifying aura from these two. Nye Jinshan, Huitubing slowly spoke. Present. From now on, the national fate current beneath this island is entrusted to you. Nie Jinshan's body violently trembled. Even though he had guessed this outcome, hearing the Marquis's instructions in person, he still couldn't accept it. Lady Gongyang, are you really going to do this? Nie Jinshan's face, usually like ice, showed intense emotional fluctuations for the first time. If heroic spirits leave the nourishment of national fate, their lives will begin a countdown. You will never be able to return. This Marquis has guarded the great Xia dragon vein for 2,000 years, all for this day. Hu Tubing's voice was perfectly calm. If this remnant body cannot fight for the dawn of all living beings, what meaning would there be in this Marquis living thousands of years? Then Jinshan wishes to go with you both. Nie Jinshan gritted his teeth and said resolutely. Nonsense. Gong Yangwan narrowed her eyes and spoke coldly. Nie Jinshan, have you forgotten what I told you? If you come with us, who will guard the great Xia dragon vein in the future? Don't forget, you are now the first-generation commander-in-chief of Great Xia, not that ignorant child anymore. Don't let your personal emotions override your rationality. What you should care about is this world, not the Marquis and me. Nie Jinshan looked at that familiar face, and for a moment, it was as if he had returned to that rainy day in his childhood. His fists clenched tightly, and after much internal struggle he took a deep breath. Yes, Lady Gongyang. Hu Tubing's gaze swept across the faces of the commanders, his eyes showing approval and gratification. He had guarded the national fate for more than 2,000 years, and almost everyone here had grown up under his watch, from their first display of talent, to gradually rising to become commanders, to finally dying in battle and coming to this island. Each of them was a successor acknowledged by Hu Tubing. Fortunately, even without Hu Tubing in this world, there was still such a group of younger generations, leading humanity step by step to where it is today. This Marquis departs. Hu Tubing withdrew his gaze, took a step forward, and when his figure reappeared, he was already hundreds of miles high in the sky, with Gong Yangwan's figure closely following. He looked down at the white chess piece in his hand, and in his eyes, the fighting spirit that had been dormant for thousands of years ignited once more. With a light sound, he crushed this chess piece into powder, scattering it in the fierce wind. Hidden for 2,000 years now, it's time to take our step. Fasting House. 7 black-robed figures slowly came to a stop in front of the helipad. Old Dog Wu pulled down his hood, looking at the familiar figure in the center of the helipad, and spoke helplessly, "Long time no see, Dr. Li." In the center of the helipad, a figure wearing a white coat stood with hands in pockets, back turned to them, head tilted up, gazing at the starry sky, the fierce wind making his coat flap loudly. He was the owner of this fasting house, also the director of Sunshine Psychiatric Hospital, and at the same time, the attending physician who had accompanied Old Dog Wu for several years, Li Yangguang. Yes, it's been a long time. Dr. Li turned around, his face showing that familiar gentle smile. You said you wanted to find me. What exactly is the matter? Dr. Li didn't speak. He walked slowly from the windswept helipad toward Old Dog Wu, his glasses reflecting the light from the overhead lamps, making it impossible to see his eyes clearly. He stopped in front of Old Dog Wu, took something out of his pocket and placed it in Wu's palm. It was a white chess piece. What is this? Old Dog Wu's eyes were full of confusion. Humanity needs. Formless. Dr. Li's tone was unprecedentedly solemn. Old Dog Wu was stunned. What do you mean? I need you to temporarily set aside medium, and as the 7th King Ruin, copy another forbidden ruin. That's not possible. Old Dog Wu shook his head. My, formless, can perfectly copy only one forbidden ruin at a time. Buli is already dead. In this world only I possess medium. If I abandon medium, they can never be awakened again, and Daxia will no longer have Special Squad 002. Hearing this, Dr. Li's lips curved slightly upward, as if he had anticipated this concern. Don't worry, I've already prepared for you. He looked back and from the fasting house, a figure in shackles was being escorted toward them. Who said you're the last person in the world to possess medium space? Dazzling suns ignited in deep space one after another, then quickly extinguished. Dozens of divine shadows crossed paths, battling with those terrifying and bizarre ecosystem gods. The shock waves from their confrontation easily pulverized the lunar monitoring satellites in the distance. There are too many of them. We can't hold them back. The three-pointed double-edged blade and the golden cudgel were each blocking two ecosystem gods but were forcibly repelled. A tree demon covered in tentacles coiled in deep space, then suddenly shot forward like lightning, flashing past Sun Wukong and Yang Jian. Behind it, four more ecosystem gods broke through the last line of defensive Dacia's gods, rushing toward the only surviving nation on that gray planet. We can't let them land in Dacia. Sun Wukong roared, instantly expanding his law of heaven and earth transformation. His enormous magical ape body, wielding the sea-calming divine needle, charged frantically toward those ecosystem gods. But before he could catch up, a worm-headed creature bit into his back from behind. Although in his law of heaven and earth state, Sun Wukong's body was already quite massive, compared to these ecosystem gods he was still half a size smaller. Yang Jian also transformed using the law of heaven and earth, helping Sun Wukong break free from the worm's bite. When he looked back, 5 ecosystem gods were about to enter Earth's upper atmosphere. At the same time, a deep red figure flew from the moon, shooting like an arrow through the battlefield of gods, instantly attracting the attention of many Dacia gods. Seeing Lin Jie going alone to intercept 5 ecosystem gods, Yang Jian's expression changed. "Monkey, go help him quickly." "You think I don't want to?" Sun Wukong's transformed body blocked a ecosystem god head-on as he said gravely, "There are too many of these monsters. If we directly abandon this battlefield to stop those 5, not only is it uncertain whether we can stop them, but once the numbers here become unbalanced, the other golden immortals will instantly be surrounded and torn to pieces. Then what do we do? Just watch him go to his death. He's Lin Jie. He won't die so easily." Sun Wukong glanced in the direction of the deep red figure's flight. "Don't forget, now he is the last miracle in the world." 5 black streaks and 1 deep red stream of light crossed the edge of Earth, rushing toward the only surviving nation in the gray world. Even though Lin Jie had pushed his speed to the limit, compared to the 5 ecosystem gods he could barely keep pace, which meant he had no way to intercept them before they landed. A cold voice appeared in his mind. "The moon's seal has already been broken by me. Even if you seal me here, how much can you change?" Hearing this familiar voice, Lin Jie frowned. His consciousness sank into the hospital in his mind, where he saw Fuss, sealed in the 6th ward, looking up at the void above, saying with a cold smile. Chaos's treatment progress was already at 95%, giving him the ability to share Lin Jie's vision. Even confined in the ward he could clearly see the outside world. "In this hospital I certainly can't beat you, but outside, even if you risk everything, how many ecosystem gods can you block?" Case spoke softly, his voice seeming to possess some kind of magic. "Watching Dacia destroyed before your eyes, powerless to change anything. This is all you, Lin Jie, are capable of." Kiss was sealed in the room and couldn't harm Lin Jie at all. All he could do was use words to disturb Lin Jie's mind, but Lin Jie naturally wouldn't be swayed by his manipulation. "I don't have many abilities, but being able to seal you is enough," Lin Jie said calmly. "And I never said that I alone could stop this disaster. Humanity is not just me, Lin Jie." Whoosh! 2 streaks of light shot out from within the atmosphere, slowly hovering in the high heavens. One wore blood-stained armor with a spear like a dragon. He raised his head, looking at the 5 divine shadows rapidly approaching, his sharp eyes bursting with unprecedented battle intent. The regret from 2,000 years ago today, it's time to make up for it, he said softly. The fourth king Ruin, Emperor of Dominion, Huitsubing. On the other side, a person with hair like a waterfall, with thousands of faces flickering beneath their robes, like a humanoid monster fused with hundreds of figures. Under eyes calm as water, it seemed as if a pair of ferocious fangs were revealed. The face of a god. I haven't collected one yet. She licked her lips. If I can devour a Ku system god before dying, I will have no regrets. The fifth king Ruin, Eternal Face, Gongyangwan. In the next moment, two forces of law surged out from within them. These two laws were not from gods, nor from this world itself. These were laws that had never existed in the world before, just like the sword mark left by Sword Saint Zhou Ping on the Great Path years ago. They were created by them, laws of ascension belonging only to humans. 2,000 years of accumulation, 2,000 years of precipitation. They had each comprehended their own laws in the national fate and in the mortal realm, but they had long since died. With only the bodies of heroic spirits, they could not bear the power of laws and ascend to divinity. But with the final secret technique of soul concealment art, they could leave this island and briefly reconstitute their physical bodies with the help of national fate. Even though they would dissipate in 10 minutes. During this time, it was enough for them to ascend and fight as gods. The thunderous lightning engulfed the blood-stained armored figure, as Huitsubing's aura rose steadily, and simultaneously, a divine power surged frantically from within his body. Endless battle intent and power of dominance emanated from that law. Within this unparalleled law contained Huitsubing's obsession from his life and after becoming a heroic spirit. That was the champion Marquis's compassion for the common people. That was the dominator emperor's absolute mastery over all things in the world. That was Huitsubing's exclusive dominion law. Boom. A divine shadow holding a long spear broke through the sea of raging thunder. Huitsubing had already ascended to the divine realm. Gongyangwan gently waved her sleeves, and immediately numerous vivid faces appeared in the surrounding void, some angry and ferocious, some resigned and gentle, some with piercing gazes, some melancholic and withdrawn. These hundreds of faces were arrayed around Gongyangwan, flickering constantly like random code. And at the same time Gongyangwan's own countenance became blurred, transforming into a hazy mist, indistinct. A strand of law permeated with mortal essence was held delicately in her palm. This was the law she had comprehended during her 2,000 years of immortal life among humans. Heavy and complex, like all the human nature she had seen, heard and consumed, good or evil, these human natures intertwined and blended together, forming a face representing all living beings in the world. That was Gongyangwan's exclusive law of all beings. When that face of all beings finally settled into Gongyangwan's original appearance, a divine power wave no weaker than Huitsubing's erupted from within her. She stood calmly in the high sky wearing that elegant court ceremonial dress. Marquis, now that you've ascended to divinity, won't you give yourself a name? Huitsubing was silent for a moment, then slowly said, "When humans seize laws they become gods, when humans create laws they become immortals. Since that's the case, this Marquis shall be the protector of all beings, the myriad phenomena immortal warrior." The moment Huitsubing's words fell, the celestial phenomena and the mountains and rivers of the earth simultaneously paused. In the next moment, under the power of the Dominion law, all things with form like weapons in the Marquis's hands, emitted an ear-splitting resonance. Gongyangwan nodded, smiling lightly. "I'm not good at naming since I have 1,000 faces transforming into all beings. I shall be called the 1,000 Faces Human Immortal. What does the Marquis think? Acceptable." Huitsubing raised his palm toward the sky above earth and pressed down forcefully. The power of domination. No, under the power of the Dominion law, a celestial formation opened before the two of them. Surging tricolored lightning rushed forth from nothingness, like a wall, settling in the sky above earth. Before this massive wall woven of tricolored lightning, 5 clone system figures quickly slowed down. They looked down at the 2 tiny figures standing before the celestial wall, letting out ear-splitting roars. At this moment 2 more figures walked out from within the celestial wall. Hu Xubing looked back. "You're late, Hu Jia." Dr. Li, with his hands in his pockets, smiled helplessly at Hu Xubing and Gong Yangwan, saying, "I had to bring someone along, got delayed a bit on the way." Beside him, old dog Wu looked in astonishment at the magnificent and enormous celestial wall before him, as well as the 2 ancient figures emanating divine auras, confusion appearing in his eyes. "Dr. Li, who are they?" "This is the first-generation director of the Demon Suppression Bureau, Champion Marquis Hu Xubing, and this is the second-generation director Gong Yangwan." Champion Marquis and Gong Yangwan? Old dog Wu didn't know about the National Fate Island, nor about the heroic spirit team, and now seeing these 2 historical figures appearing in reality, he was completely shocked. "Who exactly are you?" He turned to look at Dr. Li. Dr. Li smiled slightly, gently pushing up the gold-rimmed glasses on his nose, and explained. "The 6th King's Ruin, possessor of mind travel, Li Yangguang. You can also call me by my original name, Hu Jia." "Hu Jia." Old dog Wu murmured. He seemed to have seen this name on a stone tablet at the Night Watchman headquarters, ranked very high from the same era as Hu Xubing and Gong Yangwan. His expression looking at Dr. Li immediately became complex. "I knew you weren't an ordinary person." Dr. Li patted his shoulder and introduced to Hu Xubing and Gong Yangwan. "This is the possessor of the 7th King's Ruin, formless, Wu Tongxian." Hu Xubing nodded slightly. "By the way, why are the higher-ranked King's Ruins all from your era?" Old dog Wu asked his confusion. Dr. Li shook his head. "King's Ruins weren't originally called King's Ruins. They were named so because of us." "What do you mean?" "The king in King's Ruin doesn't refer to the Forbidden Ruins themselves, but to their former possessors. Because in the earliest era, we few were the strongest in the human world, so later generations called our Forbidden Ruins king. And the order of the King's Ruins is also the order of our strength. Do you understand now?" "What about me? I don't belong to your era." "Your formless is very special, having the ability to become any king, so it was specially included in the King's Ruin sequence." Dr. Li pointed at the chess piece in his hand. "And your existence is also a very important part in this war. So, which ability do you want me to copy?" Just as Dr. Li was about to say something, a deep blue figure stepped out from the void and arrived before the lightning wall. Seeing that figure, the corner of Dr. Li's mouth curved upward. "Look, isn't that who's here now?" Old dog Wu followed his gaze and saw a figure wearing a deep blue Han robe, standing barefoot in the void, divine power surging from within her, having already stepped into the ranks of divinity. Seeing that familiar face, old dog Wu was stunned. "The 3rd King's Ruin, immortality, Jialon." Jialon pays respects to the Marquis. Jialon bowed slightly. "So you've also achieved immortality?" Hu Xubing nodded. "Where is Lin Jie?" "He will arrive momentarily." A calm voice sounded from behind the celestial wall. A figure wearing a muddy kasaya with hands joined in prayer slowly walked out. "The 2nd King's Ruin, Destiny Buddha, Destiny Monk." Looking at that extremely familiar face, Jialon didn't have much emotional fluctuation, because she knew that it was just an entity born from predetermined result, not Lin Jie. A deep red streak of light passed over the 5 clone system gods, steadily hovering before the celestial wall, and Jialon's eyes immediately brightened. Her gaze crossed with that person's, and the latter's eyes trembled violently, but with the clone system gods approaching, he still tried to suppress the impulse in his heart, though the corners of his mouth couldn't help but curve upward. "Long time no see, Jialon." The 1st King's Ruin, causeless cause, Lin Jie. Outside the celestial wall spanning Earth's sky, 7 figures stood tall. They were the participants in this great chess game, and also the 7 strongest kings since ancient times. Starting from that broken temple 2,000 years ago, causality had guided them to finally stand here. They were the defense line after all the gods of the celestial court had emerged, the most deeply hidden human trump card in this great chess game. Lin Chia raised his head, gazing at the void above. He knew that at the highest layer of infinite time and space, there was a door silently watching this scene. The corner of his mouth curved into a faint smile. All-knowing and all-seeing? This chess move. Did you anticipate it? In the hospital room, witnessing this scene through Lin Chia's eyes, Kes looked extremely displeased. Where did these people come from? It had thought that after all the gods of Great Xia emerged, no one on earth could stop these 5 Ku-system gods unless Great Xia miraculously produced another divine realm. But it never imagined that Lin Chia would suddenly present 3 more humans who had ascended to godhood. Of course, expecting these 3 immortals to stop 5 Ku-system gods was nothing but wishful thinking. At the celestial barrier, Hu Xubing and Gong Yongwan took the lead, charging toward the 2 approaching Ku-system gods. The Ku-system gods had very unique appearances. The one facing Hu Xubing was a constantly rotating mass of indefinite matter, roughly the size of a mountain, continuously decomposing and changing color at Earth's edge, like a liquid Rubik's cube with trillions of faces. With a wave of Hu Xubing's hand, tens of thousands of lightning spears emerged from the surface of the celestial barrier, shooting like raindrops toward the bizarre deity before him. After a brief silence, clusters of scorching flames ignited on its surface, illuminating a corner of the universe. A ferocious giant mouth opened on the surface of the liquid cube. Its body instantly transformed into a twisted snake monster, its gaping maw blocking out the sky. Hu Xubing rode lightning bolts along Earth's edge, constantly evading the gods' tearing attacks while frantically channeling his sovereign power. Countless lightning spears covered the battlefield like artillery, enveloping both figures within. Gong Yongwan faced a thin mist of deep blue. A giant eye danced like flames above the mist, releasing an immense aura. Even though she had become the 1,000-faced human immortal, she seemed as insignificant as an ant before it. The Destiny monk narrowed his eyes, his fingertips wrapped in causality threads trembled slightly as if calculating something. After a moment he rose into the air. I'll go help Gong Yongwan. Hu Xubing, Gong Yongwan and the Destiny monk directly engaged 2 Ku-system gods, but the other 3 showed no intention of stopping, simultaneously charging toward the remaining 4 people. Among the 4, Dr. Li, Old Dog Wu and Lin Chia had not achieved godhood. Jialan alone could not possibly block the attack of 3 Ku-system gods. Jialan turned to look at Lin Chia. Go do what you can, leave the rest to me, Lin Chia smiled. All right. Jialan was about to act when she seemed to remember something. She turned to Lin Chia, her cheeks flushing. Does what you said 2,000 years ago still count? Of course it does. Good. This master is off then. Jialan's form transformed into a deep blue streak of light, crashing directly into a crimson miniature star. This star was quite different from the Ku-system god that had crashed toward Earth over 2,000 years ago. Its body was only 1/10,000,000th the size of the latter, merely the size of a meteorite. But the surface of this miniature star was filled with crimson magma, like a burning stellar core, constantly releasing terrifying heat into the surroundings. This heat distorted the surrounding space-time, making it difficult even for those at the Supreme Realm to approach. Yet Jialan seemed completely unaware as she plunged headfirst into the star core's magma. The next moment, the entire star core began to tremble slightly, as if something was frantically stirring its body. Did it work? Dr. Li asked. Old Dog Wu slowly withdrew his hand. Yes. Just now, Old Dog Wu's fingertips had touched Jialan's hair, activating the 7th King's void formless, perfectly copying immortality from Jialan. In terms of defense alone, even bathing in a star would not be a problem. But even with immortality, I have almost no chance of winning against that thing. Old Dog Wu glanced at the approaching Kusystem god and asked solemnly, "What do we do next?" Dr. Li remained silent. He pinched the temple of his gold-rimmed glasses, gently removing them. His eyes radiated brilliant white light. His realm began to break through from the human ceiling, continuously pushing toward higher levels. "You're becoming a god too?" Seeing this, Old Dog Wu exclaimed in shock. "I've been at the human ceiling for over 100 years. Isn't becoming a god quite normal?" Dr. Li shrugged. "However, I don't have the talent of the Marquis and Lady Gongyang to create my own laws. Fortunately, most gods of this era have fallen, leaving enough laws for me to choose from." He made a grasping motion in the air and a strand of law condensed from nothingness. This law was one that already existed in the world. Since its master perished with the fall of the divine realm, Dr. Li had set his sights on it. It was the most suitable for him, the law of mind. As the law merged with his body, Dr. Li's aura rose rapidly, forcibly breaking through the human barrier and stepping into the divine realm. Magnificent divine might surged from within him, instantly making his presence mysteriously unfathomable, like a specter existing between reality and illusion. One glance at him would cause forgetfulness, as if his very existence were merely an illusion conjured by the human mind. Bang! A streak of blood burst from his knee, and strands of white law threads dispersed, dissolving into the world. He was beginning to dissolve into the Tao. Unlike Hua Tsubing and Gongyang Wan, whose current physical forms were condensed from Great Xia's national fortune and could only exist for 10 minutes, thus avoiding the crisis of dissolution, Dr. Li's body was mortal flesh that simply couldn't contain the power of laws. From the moment he entered the divine realm, he began to self-destruct, just like Zhou Ping before him. But Dr. Li wasn't panicking. He stepped forward, slowly standing in front of Old Dog Wu, white law threads floating around him as if he would soon vanish into smoke. "Your body can't withstand it much longer," Old Dog Wu frowned, knowing well the nature of dissolution. "I know. That's why I must abandon this physical form." Dr. Li looked at Old Dog Wu seriously. "Next, I will transfer my mental world into your body. This way we can become a dual-state superimposed mind god. I won't interfere with your daily life, nor will the other neighbors. You will still be Wu Tongxian. I will only appear when you need me. Can you accept this?" Old Dog Wu didn't understand the ability of mind travel, and couldn't fully grasp Dr. Li's meaning, but that didn't prevent him from making a decision. Yes. During those years when Old Dog Wu was imprisoned in the fasting house, Dr. Li had always accompanied him. Though he didn't know who Hu Jia was, he absolutely trusted Dr. Li's character. Now facing a great enemy, if there was a method to resolve everything, he wouldn't hesitate to offer his body. Dr. Li nodded, the threads of dissolution gradually dispersing as his body began to blur. He raised his fingertip and gently touched it to the center of Old Dog Wu's forehead. "Huh. You've moved to a new home again," a voice sounded beside Wu Laogo's ear. Then a second voice rang out, "Calculating the time, it should be time to respond to the Holy Covenant, right? I wonder how that guy Lin Chier is doing. Let me introduce myself. My name is Yen Zhong, and from now on, I'll be staying in your spiritual world. My name is Lu Fonglin. My name is Wei Yiqing." At this moment, more than a dozen voices echoed in Wu Laogo's ears, leaving him completely bewildered. "All right, we'll have the landlord meeting later. Let's deal with the important matters first." Hu Jia's voice sounded and the other voices instantly disappeared. He solemnly asked, "Wu Tongxian, can I borrow control of your body first?" "No problem," Wu Laogo responded in his mind. Boom. In the outside world, a visible divine aura field erupted from Wu Laogo's body. Dr. Li's form completely dissipated along with the decomposing law threads, and at the same time, Wu Laogo slowly opened his eyes. Through those deep and mysterious pupils, it was as if a vast spiritual universe was flowing between his mind. The god of mind Hu Jia. Through mind travel, Hu Jia had successfully transferred his spiritual world after deification into Wu Laogo's body, and with the blessing of immortality, perfectly solved the problem of physical dissipation. Now Wu Laogo had become a special existence under the triple superposition of formless, immortality, and mind travel, and also possessed an immortal body, as the god of mind. As Dr. Li disappeared, an ancient ocarina fell into Wu Laogo's palm. He looked up at the approaching K-system god, slowly raised the ocarina to his lips and gently played. No sound came from the damaged ocarina, but invisibly, a mental intention swept across the entire scene, like a giant hand grabbing the K-system god's will and forcibly dragging it into another spiritual world. The K-system god's body froze in mid-air, its eyes becoming dull, like an empty shell without consciousness. At this point, of the original 5 K-system gods, 4 had been completely restrained. Lin Chia looked up at the last approaching divine K-system, his right hand gripping the hilt of his straight knife, slowly raising it to mid-air. A brilliant reverse summoning formation bloomed in the void, and the original Lin Chia appeared beside him, left hand gripping the knife hilt. The 2 Lin Kais stood side by side, hands gripping the hilts of their straight knives, their deep red cloaks swaying in the air. This world needs a seraph. Lin Chia calmly spoke. On his right wrist, the golden thread woven into a rope automatically floated to the Lin Chia body's wrist. A golden domain opened beneath the physical body's feet, and the golden thread, as if finding its destination, instantly disappeared into it. That was the last mortal divine domain in the world, existing within Lin Chia's physical body. That body was Michael's proxy, and he was also the only carrier of Michael's laws after his death. As Michael's laws disappeared into the mortal divine domain, the spiritual power of Lin Chia's physical body multiplied several times. A divine power was born from within the golden light, forcibly breaking through the barriers of mortal flesh, and stepping into the divine realm in one go. 6 snow-white wings broke out from both sides of his back. His originally somewhat rough skin became as white as jade. The black hair hanging vertically from his brows grew at a visible speed until it reached his ankles. His appearance gradually became androgynous, like a jade artifact carved by nature, perfect without a single flaw. A sense of inviolable sanctity emanated from this physical body, making anyone who looked at it unable to resist the urge to worship. At this moment, a new seraph had been born. Looking at this self, that had transformed into a seraph, Lin Chia's expression was somewhat dazed, as if he saw the confused youth who had just obtained this mortal divine domain in Songnan City. Years of time flashed by, and the former proxy of the seraph had become a true seraph. Bang! Dissipating blood mist burst from Seraph Lin Chia's body, but with a flash of the mortal divine domain light, the drifting laws instantly vanished without a trace. Its mortal divine domain, symbolizing miracles, could restore the entire destroyed Songnan city from more than a decade ago, and naturally could also restore his dissipating physical body. Dissipation is a problem that every mortal flesh must face, but for a miracle, this is not difficult. Even though his former physical body had become a true seraph, Lin Chia still had no intention of switching his soul back, because what he was plotting was far more than this. Causal threads wrapped around Seraph Lin Chia's body, and with a powerful flap of those 6 pure white wings, his form instantly penetrated the void, shooting straight toward the last K-system god. It was an aggregate of countless suffering heads floating and constantly rotating like a hurricane. These heads occasionally revealed mysterious purple or golden runes on their foreheads, with endless retching and slapping sounds coming from within, making one's scalp tingle. Sensing Seraph Lin Chia's approach, the dense mass of suffering heads opened their mouths simultaneously. Purple runes interwove and purple fire spewed from each head's mouth, forming a surging pillar of fire that poured down toward the golden figure below. Seraph Lin Chia grabbed at the void with both hands, drawing a golden holy sword from the mortal divine domain. The sacred aura howled as it cut through the purple fire, the rolling aftermath illuminating heaven and earth in gold and purple. At the same time, a Kusanagi sword soared into the sky from behind. Spirit embryo Lin Chia flicked his wrist, and the sword light penetrated through the hurricane-like swirling mass of heads, cutting dozens of heads into pieces, breaking out from the other side, then violently twisting direction to penetrate the hurricane again. Strands of causal threads extended from those shattered heads, entangling around spirit embryo Lin Chia's fingertips. Like a puppeteer covered in threads, with a slight lift of his fingertips, he tore open a gap in the surging hurricane. The six-winged figure holding the holy sword broke straight through the purple fire and into that gap. Its mortal divine domain extended like a tide toward the many heads, erasing the purple runes on their foreheads, instantly turning them into dark gray head fragments falling toward the ground below. Spirit embryo Lin Chia's control of two bodies inevitably made his movements somewhat sluggish, but fortunately he only needed to control his seraph avatar to lead the attack while his original body provided support, as the mortal divine domain was the nemesis of these K-system gods. Under the triple suppression of the mortal divine domain, causeless cause, and the Kusanagi sword, he alone was frantically crushing the K-system god before him, and he was the only one among the many battlefields at this moment who had gained such an absolute advantage. Thunder spears rained down like raindrops covering the sky, as Hu Tsubing and the liquid cube chased each other, speeding through deep space. As this Ku-system god was lured to a battlefield far from Earth, Hu Tsubing finally halted his movement, turning to face the roaring snake-like cube approaching him, his eyes narrowing slightly. This distance should be about right. The hand gripping his spear suddenly tensed, a crimson intent flowing across the surface of his skin. Emperor's crimson blood. Boom. His already overwhelming divine power multiplied explosively. His combat prowess, already at the peak of major gods, pushed infinitely closer to the supreme realm. This was the first time he had used Emperor's crimson blood since becoming a god, and it would also be the last. With only 10 minutes of life remaining, he could freely unleash the power of Dominator Emperor. At this moment he was the master of all creation. Hu Tsubing hurled his spear with force, which instantly transformed into a streak of light, disappearing at the edge between Earth and space. He turned to face the approaching Ku-system god, his surging divine power already reaching its peak. The snake-like liquid cube rapidly decomposed and spread out, taking only half a second to transform into a ferocious giant mouth large enough to devour stars. Hu Tsubing had no doubt that with its size, this mouth could bite off 1/3 of the moon in a single gulp. The moment this giant mouth enveloped the starry sky, Hu Tsubing was destined to have no possibility of escape. And he had no intention of escaping. Wisps of white smoke rose from beneath his broken armor, as Hu Tsubing, with his aura infinitely approaching the supreme, stood barehanded in deep space, his eyes suddenly focusing. The invisible power of dominance filled the surrounding space. As the liquid cube bit down, endless particles like an ocean enveloped his form. These unknown substances frantically churned and rubbed against each other, like a writhing stomach. Break. From the deepest part of the stomach, Hu Tsubing's lips barely moved, yet no sound emerged. The churning liquid cube suddenly froze, and an invisible pair of dominating hands easily tore the stomach open from within. The armored figure stepped out into the void. The next moment, thousands of thunder spears shot out from the wall of celestial phenomena, completely submerging the liquid cube behind him. Dazzling explosions burned like a blazing sun. Watching the liquid cube churning within the flames, Hu Tsubing's brows furrowed slightly. These damned things were indeed difficult to kill. 2,000 years ago, when he was still at the peak of human capability, he had barely defeated Kuzan with the enhancement of Emperor's crimson blood. Now as the myriad phenomena wore immortal plus Emperor's crimson blood, he could dominate the battlefield like Lin Chia. But completely killing a battle-hardened Ku system god was still not so simple. Hu Xubing glanced toward Earth. In Earth's outer orbit, a shadow flashed by at an astonishing speed, instantly disappearing. It was time. A gleam flashed in Hu Xubing's eyes as he raised his empty hands and closed them in midair toward the liquid cube emerging from the flames. Under the control of the law of dominance, that surging mass of indefinite matter was frantically compressed toward the center, like a ball of putty being continuously kneaded, becoming increasingly dense and smaller. During this process, the liquid cube struggled and twisted frantically, trying to break free from Hu Xubing's control, but being composed of matter itself, it couldn't escape in the short term under the law of dominance that approached the supreme. Its form was compressed into a high-density sphere the size of a building. Hu Xubing virtually held this Ku system god in his hands, continuously approaching the wall of celestial phenomena at Earth's edge. Above Earth's outer orbit, a shadow too fast for the naked eye to capture continued to accelerate. By now the spear's speed far exceeded escape velocity, but under the dual effects of Earth's gravity and the law of dominance, it continued to orbit around Earth's outer perimeter. Like a particle being accelerated in an accelerator, it spun frantically along the equator's sky, now circling Earth 3.5 times per second. This speed, approaching half the speed of light, far exceeded humanity's current speed limits. It was a thunder-wreathed spear. As the spear circled, a very thin deep blue ring was gradually outlined in Earth's sky, and now the liquid cube was continuously approaching this ring under Hu Xubing's restraint. Seeming to sense the terrifying energy contained in the thunder spear, the liquid cube struggled violently, but under the restraint of the power of dominance, it still couldn't break free at all. Hu Xubing stood firm above Earth, his aura firmly locking onto this Ku system god, his eyes narrowing. This time, you can't escape. Bang 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 bang. As Hu Xubing and the liquid cube's forms charged into the circular orbit, several hollow gaps instantly burst open on the latter's body. Dense fragments of matter floated in the sky above Earth's orbit. The spear was like a high-frequency sewing machine, blasting 3 holes per second in the Ku system god's body, and still accelerating. No matter how it reinforced its defenses, they would be crushed by the terrifying kinetic energy contained in the spear. That enormous liquid body diminished at a visible rate. The law of dominance frantically cut apart its body, and above the gray planet, this twisted Ku system god let out a silent howl. As Hu Xubing made a grasping motion in midair, the spear, which had been accelerated to 2/3 the speed of light at Earth's edge, slightly altered its direction, directly breaking free from Earth's gravity and carrying terrifying energy as it smashed into the remnants of the liquid cube. Lightning erupted as a brilliant deep blue sun explosively burst forth above Earth. Sensing that terrifying destructive aura, spirit embryo Lin Chia turned to look, his expression slightly moved. As expected of the Marquis, he murmured. Perhaps many wouldn't have expected that the first Ku system god to fall in this divine war would be slain by Hu Xubing. But Lin Chia wasn't surprised. On the front lines of the divine battlefield, the gods of Great Xia faced the main assault of the Ku system gods, and with the disparity in numbers and combat power, they could only maintain a balance. Finding an opportunity to kill a Ku system god in the chaos was extremely difficult. These 5 isolated Ku system gods were divided by Lin Chia and the other 6, each fighting separately. Hu Xubing had not only ascended to myriad phenomena war immortal, but with the enhancement of Emperor's crimson blood, his combat power had multiplied. Being the first to kill a Ku system god was within reason. After killing that Ku system god, Hu Xubing charged toward the battlefield of the Great Xia gods to help them share the pressure. And here it was time to speed things up. The seraph Lin Chia gripped the golden holy sword with both hands, flapped his 6 pure white wings, and like a bolt of lightning he shot through the void, crashing into the hurricane of heads. With mortal divine domain protecting him, the aura of those bizarre evil spirits couldn't harm the seraph at all. Brilliant divine light burst from within the hurricane, and large numbers of heads had their purple runes erased, floating out from within. In the deep void, this hurricane of accumulated heads, a destruction system god, continuously writhed and twisted. Countless heads floated up and down, interweaving into a massive face of painful struggle. Countless purple runes lit up, and these floating heads simultaneously turned from facing outward to facing inward. One by one, withered backs of heads were exposed on the outside. Then surging purple flames ignited from within, turning the entire hurricane purple. Looking at the rolling purple fire hurricane before him, the spirit embryo Lin Chia, still at his original position, narrowed his eyes. Dense threads of cause and effect floated out from the knife handle, connecting with those surging backs of heads. Unlike the previous Black Toad, this destruction system god was composed of countless heads, and the cause and effect threads on its body were extremely dense. He couldn't control the opponent's actions by creating a section of causeless cause, but disrupting these cause and effect threads that originally belonged to it was effortless. Under spirit embryo Lin Chia's control, the vast number of cause and effect threads intertwined and connected, like a giant cocoon wrapping around the purple fire hurricane, immediately slowing down the latter's movement. In the center of the roaring purple fire hurricane, a golden light brilliantly shone. Seraph Lin Chia raised the holy sword with both hands and slashed down forcefully. Boom! A pillar of light swept past the edge of the moon like a sword beam, extending all the way into the boundless depths of the universe. The purple fire hurricane, bound by cause and effect, was directly split in half by this sword. The cut, as if melted by golden light, continuously collapsed in the deep void. As the purple flames gradually dissipated, a bloody figure walked out from the remains. Seraph Lin Chia's surface had been burned black by the purple fire, but it was healing at a visible speed. He held the golden holy sword in one hand, like a holy angel reborn from fire. Slaying a god, so this is what it feels like. He stood on mortal divine domain, looking at the scattered falling remains of the destruction system god around him, murmuring to himself. The two Lin Kais exchanged glances, then simultaneously turned to look at another battlefield, rushing away. In space far from Earth, a red star core was frantically flying around like a headless fly. Scalding magma churned on its surface as if something was stirring within. This red flowing light kept changing direction, seemingly desperate to plunge into the distant sun. Stop it! Spirit embryo Lin Chia arrived from afar, looking at the dazzling star core before him, and said in a deep voice. The seraph flapped his 6 wings, his figure closely following the red star core's frantic flight. One red and one golden stream of light constantly chased each other, yet they could never touch the star core's true body. Lin Chia frowned. His gaze locked onto a certain floating cause and effect thread, his fingertip lightly hooked, and his form directly shifted to the other end of the cause and effect thread. Hot, scalding magma churned beneath his feet, emitting heat that directly scorched Lin Chia's body somewhat black. If he weren't a primordial spirit embryo, any other main god would likely have been instantly burned to ashes. Even so, his vision was somewhat blurred by the high temperature. If he stayed here too long, his eyes would likely melt directly. Lin Chia estimated that just the surface of this star core was at least 5 million degrees, and beneath that lava-like red substance, it should be tens of millions of degrees. Looking at the fiery red before him, Lin Chia gritted his teeth and directly extended his palm beneath the magma. Wisps of white smoke rose from beneath the magma, and Lin Chia's expression immediately became somewhat fierce. After stirring for a while as if grabbing something, he pulled hard. A deep blue figure was dragged out from the magma. Half of Lin Chia's arm had already been burned to white bone. He wrapped his other arm around Jalan's waist and quickly rushed to a distance. Chia. Jalan saw that half of Lin Chia's arm had melted, and concern appeared in her eyes. Are you okay? I'm fine. Lin Chia shook his head. Primordial spirit energy surged from the white bones, rapidly repairing his body. His skin surface emitted a white jade glow. But what about you? How did you dive headfirst into that star core? That's not a place where humans can stay. It's fine, it had no effect on me, look. Jalan quickly rolled up her sleeves, revealing 2 snow-white arms. The light of immortality appeared on them without the slightest trace of injury. But it was bigger inside than I imagined. No matter how I swam, I couldn't get out, so I just kept punching inside. If you hadn't come to fish me out, I probably wouldn't have gotten out for days. Lin Chia looked at the listless star core in the distance and couldn't help but laugh. If you had continued to torment it for half a day longer, I think it would have been tortured to death. To be honest, the destructive power contained in this star core was stronger than all the destruction system gods Lin Chia had seen so far. But ironically, it encountered Jalan, who had ascended to immortal fairy. It probably never imagined that someone could directly charge into its star core, cause havoc for so long and remain completely unharmed. But it's not dead yet, what should we do? Jalan tilted her head and thought for a moment. How about you throw me back in? No need, leave the rest to me. A golden stream of light passed by the two, and Seraph Lin Chia charged straight toward the star core. After being frantically tormented by Jalan for so long, its state had already deteriorated by more than half, and its speed was far from what it was before. As mortal divine domain opened, it was directly drawn in. Dazzling light flashed continuously. Jalan, held in Lin Chia's arms, couldn't help but look up at that long-missed face, her slightly curved eyes as bright as stars. Chia, how long have I Before Jalan could finish speaking, those lips so close to hers directly covered her mouth. Warm softness instantly filled her mind and she froze in place. Boom! A sun-like explosion blossomed from the distant divine domain. Countless star core fragments burst forth, like fireworks shining in the universe, streaking across the deep sky. Light and shadow crossed on their faces as if they were in a grand fireworks banquet. In the uninhabited deep space, the reflection of Jalan's face in Lin Chia's gentle eyes seemed to be glowing. Jalan stared blankly at those eyes so close to her, and after a moment she finally came to her senses. Her cheeks instantly turned red and her eyes were full of joy. A moment later, Lin Chia's lips slightly parted and he spoke with an apologetic expression. I know this might not be the right time, but I've waited for you for over 2,000 years and now, I really don't want to. We're not done yet, don't interrupt. Before Lin Chia could finish, Jalan actively pressed her lips against Lin Chia's, stopping the latter half of his sentence. Under Lin Chia's astonished gaze, Jalan's arms encircled Lin Chia's shoulders, and her assault on his lips was even more fierce than Lin Chia's earlier. Her eyes unconsciously closed. It wasn't just Lin Chia who had been waiting for this moment, but her as well. Under the fireworks in deep space they embraced each other. This two-way waiting that had continued for over 2,000 years finally came to an end at this moment. After a long time, Jalan finally loosened her grip slightly, her cheeks completely flushed. I just wasn't, oh my. She looked at Lin Chia before her, suddenly realizing what she had just done. She stammered for a while, unable to form a complete sentence, and finally simply lowered her head, avoiding Lin Chia's gaze. At that moment, Lin Chia gently took Jalan's hands, startling her into looking up. Lin Chia was gazing at her, his eyes filled with unprecedented seriousness. Jalan, marry me. These words echoed in Jalan's mind, causing her body to tremble slightly. Sealed in the coffin for over 2,000 years, surrounded only by its cold walls, she would have given up long ago if not for that promise made years ago. She had countless times recalled her travels with Lin Chia that year, countless times imagined what future they would face after the coffin was opened. But what she imagined most was the scene of Lin Chia proposing to her. And now, this moment was happening right before her eyes, in a place she never expected, in a way she never imagined. Jialon was about to agree immediately, but then thought it might make her seem too casual, so she pretended to be deep in contemplation. Her delicate eyebrows furrowed slightly as she recalled all the saddest things in her life, barely managing to suppress the smile at the corners of her mouth. Seeing Jialon hesitate, Lin Chia was bewildered, and from her expression, it seemed she wasn't considering whether to accept, but rather how to save the universe. After a moment, Jialon's brow relaxed. "All right. I accept." Seeing Jialon's triumphant smile, Lin Chia couldn't help but feel both amused and exasperated. "When are we getting married?" Jialon asked eagerly. "Once this turmoil is over, I'll prepare the wedding as soon as we return." "Will it be lively?" "Of course." Lin Chia pointed to the distance. "We'll have the Sword Saint as matchmaker, the gods of Great Xia as witnesses. Invite all the night watchers and ask the Queen Mother for several hundred peaches of immortality. How does that sound?" "Several hundred peaches? Will she give them to us?" "Times have changed. If she doesn't, I'll go with Brother Monkey to steal. No, to request them." Jialon couldn't help but laugh. "It's a promise then, no going back on your word." Lin Chia thought for a moment, then his fingertip traced through the void, causing a fragment of star core to fall into his palm. It visibly melted and reformed, finally transforming into a deep red ring. At the same time, a thread of causality connecting him and Jialon was manipulated by causeless cause to wrap around the ring, becoming circles of white patterns, elegant and mysterious. "Since this is a proposal, there naturally should be a ring." Lin Chia slowly placed the deep red ring on Jialon's finger, saying softly, "Aren't you always worried that I won't keep my word? This ring carries the causality between you and me. Once you wear it, it becomes part of immortality, also representing the eternal, unchanging vow between us." Jialon gently raised her hand, looking at the ring that glimmered with mysterious light in the deep void, momentarily entranced. "Good. I'll accept it then." Jialon withdrew her hand, her eyes full of joy. Old Dog Wu doesn't need help, and Gongyang Wan and Fate Monk are about to finish their enemies. Let's go help the great Xia gods. Lin Chia's gaze swept across the battlefield. "Let's win quickly. Go home for the wedding quickly. Have children quickly." Jialon pumped her fist, her fighting spirit bursting forth as she rushed toward the distant battlefield. In the chaotic divine battlefield, a massive demon ape wielding a golden cudgel smashed it toward a point in the void. Under the gaze of those burning golden eyes, an invisible giant wolf appeared, its ferocious fangs tearing open a rift in space, firmly biting down on the huge golden cudgel. Cracks spread across the cudgel's surface. "Yang Jian!" Sun Wukong roared, and in the next moment, a three-pointed double-edged blade flashing with lightning struck the wolf's body, leaving a shallow wound. Sun Wukong took the opportunity to retrieve his golden cudgel, looking at the cracks on it with a pained expression. "This creature is very strong, be extremely careful," said Yang Jian in silver armor as he landed beside Sun Wukong. Whoosh! A golden light streaked across the sky, heading straight for the invisible giant wolf. The radiance of mortal divine domain enveloped the battlefield as a six-winged seraph wielding a giant sword came slashing down. Lin Chia and Jialon arrived at the battlefield right after, blocking the giant wolf's escape routes from left and right. Seeing this, Sun Wukong's eyes brightened. "I knew that kid wouldn't die so easily." A seraph. Yang Jian looked at the six-winged avatar with some surprise. Michael died, so he naturally inherited the seraph's laws. "Haven't you noticed? His aura is different from before." Sun Wukong's fiery golden eyes observed Lin Chia, his lips curving upward. "It seems he has gone further than any of us." Yang Jian's gaze fell on the ring on Jialon's finger, and he was momentarily stunned. "Brother, you're getting married?" he transmitted to Lin Chia. "Yes," Lin Chia smiled. "After this is over, remember to come to the wedding." Hearing these words, Yang Jian's eyes filled with joy. While helping to surround the invisible giant wolf, he thought to himself, "Mother, do you see? Seventh brother is starting a family." Under the 5-directional encirclement, the invisible giant wolf's space for movement grew increasingly limited. It swept its fierce gaze over everyone, cautiously retreating. Even so, the golden sword light piercing through deep space continued to leave wounds on its body. It roared at the seraph Lin Chia above, causing the surrounding space-time to distort. It was Musicius, a being who had once challenged the key to the door. Among the dozen or so K-system gods who had descended, its battle prowess definitely ranked near the top, and its pride was the most arrogant. Now, being surrounded by beings it considered insignificant, its anger had been completely ignited. Just as it was about to make a desperate move, it suddenly seemed to sense something and abruptly looked up. In its fierce eyes, fear actually appeared. At the same time, a mysterious and majestic presence suddenly descended. The spirit embryo Lin Chia, who had been focused on controlling his avatar, was startled and looked up. Above this deep space battlefield, a rotating space-time vortex was rapidly forming, and a familiar aura surged from within. The moment he sensed this aura, Lin Chia's expression changed drastically. "Key to the door?"